All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. We have a beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Lamed Ches, a lot of very interesting halachas. We begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank Ed and Faith Wolf, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Shvat, for dedicating all of the Shiur and Drushos this month in memory of Faith's mother, Nessa Bas Velvel, and Berachos Silber for dedicating all of the Shiur and Drushos this month in memory of her husband, Avram ben Kalman Eliezer Halevi. We also thank our anonymous sponsor for a week of learning, for dedicating the learning in the merit of Refuah Shlema for Kalman Leib ben Genendel MS, and Nechama Tamar Bas Bracha Sarah. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, they will have a refuah together with Kol Chola Yisrael. And we thank Jack Bennett for dedicating the learning this week in memory of his grandfather, Chaim Fedorovsky, his first wife, Polina, their three children, and Jack's great-grandmother, Basia Fedorovsky, who were killed by the Nazis in Machshon V'Zichron Babiyar in 1941. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. And Rabbi say, with that, let us begin. So some fascinating Gemaras today. So we're picking up, like I said, today's daf is Lamed Ches 38. We are picking up 37b, and we are picking up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. So some interesting cases, continuing a little bit again in, let me just get to the place in Shulchan Aruch. Continuing to, more in halachos concerning dafka pas, concerning bread, and ultimately what constitutes bread, as we already began to see a little bit yesterday. So says the Gemara, trukanin, chayavim b'chala. So we'll say truknin, right? So what are truknin? Truknin are chayav and chala. Now remember again, chayav and chala refers to the portion of the dough that you have to separate for the kohen. So to say that something is chayav and chala is another way of saying what? That it is bread. So truknin are chayav and chala. What are truknin? We'll see that. V'chi asar rabin am Rabbi Yochanan, truknin p'turim min chala. Rabbi Yochanan on the other hand says that truknin are patur from chala. My truknin am Rabbi kuba da'ara. Very interesting. Look at Rashi. Kuba da'ara. It's the wide lines in the bottom of Rashi. Kuba da'ara. Osa makum chala b'kira. V'nosim b'socho mayim v'kemach kimosha osim be'elfas. So very interesting. I will say what you do is, this is an interesting type of bread, where you go ahead and you create essentially like an oven inside of the ground. You pour, as you're going to see, you pour water and flour into it, and ultimately, again, you form a loaf of bread like that. We'll discuss what's unique about this in just a moment. So therefore, again, machlokes about trukanin, is it bread, is it not bread? So I'll tell you, interestingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch discusses this case. And the reason I'm jumping right to the Shulchan Aruch is because the Shulchan Aruch actually gives a bit more definition around this truknin case. He says, truknin, dahainu sha'osin guma bekira, v'nostin ba kemach umayim me'uravin ba v'ne'ef hasham. So Shulchan Aruch paskins that this truknin, same idea, you're digging a hole in the ground, you're going ahead and pouring in the water and the flour, and it bakes into a loaf there. So the Shulchan Aruch actually paskins, mevarich alav bore mine mizonos ubracha achas mein shalosh. You make a mizonos and an alamichya. Now, what's unique about this case? So the Mishnah Berurah comments on this, and he says the reason is ayam amagin aram shekasav sha'osin belila raka ma'od. This is a loose batter. As we're going to begin to see, the definition ultimately of bread is something that is kneaded into a thicker dough. Anything that is a loose batter, by definition, does not have it does not bread, but rather again is some type of mizonos. So it's interesting. So the way this is happening over here is, if you can imagine, you have essentially like an in-the-ground oven, you're pouring in the batter, it sits there, and the heat itself kind of causes it to form into a mass of bread. But because, again, the batter is loose, halacha l'maisa, the Shulchan Aruch is paskening that it is a mizonos. Next case, Amar Abaye, Trisa p'tur min chala. On the other hand, Trisa is patur from chala. What's Trisa? My Trisa. Ika da'amri gavil mirsach, the Ika da'amri nama dehindika. Some say it's this gavil marsach. Rashi says over here, gavil marsach, nostim kemach umayim bikli, ubochshin bakaf, v'shovchin ala kira kishahina sekes. So we'll say it's interesting. You go ahead and you put water and flour in a utensil. And Abba says, this is interesting. So this is also the loose batter. But what this is, you know, it almost sounds like a pancake. You're pouring it like on a griddle, on a heated surface, and it bakes like that. So others say it's nama de hindika, which literally means Indian bread. Batzek sha'ofen b'shipud, umoshchen also tamid b'shemen, obemei beitzim b'shemen. So it's interesting, you would put dough on a spit, roast it or bake it, I guess, on an open fire, and you would baste it, you would coat it with oil or eggs, oil or eggs, right? Oil or eggs, or different, shemen, beitzim v'shemen. So the Shulchan Aruch comments on this also, and the Shulchan Aruch writes as follows. This is all in the same sif. This is Simin Kuf Samiches Sif Tes Vav. So the Shulchan Aruch writes over here, Tarisa. דהיינו שלוקחים קמח ומים ומערבין אותו ושופכים אותו על הקירה ומשפשט ונפש. Shabbos say, Teresa, right, is even a different issue, because not only is it a loose batter, but it also does not have what's called tura dinama. It doesn't have the appearance of bread. Instead, again, it just kind of forms into a flat pancake. Ein alav toras lechem, ve'ein mevarchin alav ela borei minei mezonos ubracha achas mein sholosh. So begin to see something very interesting. If something has a loose batter, it's not bread. If it doesn't have the appearance of bread, it's not bread. What about this Indian bread? Nama de hindika. So the Shulchan Aruch over here says, "V'hu lechem she'ofen b'shipud u'moshchen oso b'shemno b'meitzim v'chei lechem oso l'kuzach." So we'll see that in just a second. Shabbos said we're going to see that this nama hindika, also because it's not baked like regular bread, it's put on a spit, and essentially again it's covered with either eggs or oil, also doesn't have the status of bread. Similarly, lechem ha'asri l'kusach. If you have bread that is made for kusach, remember again, kusach was this Babylonian dip that they used to eat, made out of moldy bread and curdled milk. Exactly. We're going to have some next Sunday, Mir Hashem. So lechem asar l'kusach, tani Rabbi Chia, lechem asar l'kusach, pater min challah. Rabbi Chia says it's pater from challah. V'ha tanya chayiv b'challah. I have elsewhere that you chayiv in challah. Hasim kidik tani tani Rabbi Yehuda Omer ma'aseh mochichan aleha. So we'll say, interestingly enough, bread made for kusach depends. Sometimes asa on top of lamed ches, asa in ke'avin. If you make it thick, chayovin, then ultimately, again, it's chayiv in challah. The reason for that, Rabbi says, if you make it thick, it's regular bread. Kilimudin, however, if you make it thin, then p'turin. Ultimately, again, it's pater. So you begin to see a number of different important halachas when it comes to the determination regarding bread, which is the Shulchan Aruch understands really in three different ways. Number one, bolilav. Anything that has a loose batter, by definition, is not called bread. Not called bread. Number two, we already saw this in yesterday's daf, but this torisa dinamo, having the appearance of bread. It must look like bread, and it also appears that it must be baked like bread. So being baked like bread means in some type of oven-like item, as opposed to, let's say, on a spit, being basted with liquid. So halacha l'maaseh, if you have a dough if you have a dough that is like any of these different types of breads, right? The one, as we just mentioned before, then halacha l'maaseh, it has the status of a mazonos and not the status of bread. Now, of course, we will see when it comes to mazonos, if you are kovea su'uda, right? If you go ahead and you establish a meal around a mazonos type item, it may transform into bread in that you may be required to make a hamotzi and bench afterwards, but that remains to be seen later on. Good. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef. Hai kuba da'ara, mai mevarchin iluya. This kuba da'ara, what bracha do you make on it? So let's remember again, the kuba da'ara is the case that we mentioned before. This is where you're taking the loose batter. I got a little bit ahead of ourselves in the Shulchan Aruch, but you take the loose batter, you're pouring it like into a cavity in the ground, and the loose batter is baking in that cavity. What bracha do you make on it? Amarlei, mi savris namahu. Do you hold that this kuba da'ara, do you think that it's bread? It's not bread. Guvla ba'almahu. Ultimately, it's a batter. It's a batter, and therefore umevarchin iluya borei minei mezonos. And therefore, halacha l'maaseh, because it's a batter, all you do is make a mezonos on it. Marzutra kavas suudase iluya ubarech iluya hamotzi lechem min haaretz v'shalosh brachos. So Marzutra would go ahead and make a meal around this kuba da'ara, and even though technically speaking it's mezonos, because he was kovea sud around it, therefore what? He would make a hamotzi and bench. Arma baravashi, va'adam yotzei bahen yedei chavaso bepesach. But halacha l'maisa, a person could go ahead and use it for matzah, could fulfill his obligation for matzah. My time on Rabbi, interesting enough, what's the reason for that? Lechem oni karinan bei, because since it's a compromised bread, therefore halacha l'maisa, it satisfies the criteria of lechem oni. Remember again, by Pesach, we have to eat not just simply matzah, but something that conforms to the criteria of poor man's bread. So Rav Ashi felt that this type of bread was compromised to begin with, and therefore again, assuming that you did not allow it to become chametz, satisfies the criteria of lechem oni. Interesting. V'amar Rav Ashi. Hi duvsha de tamri. So now another interesting idea. So just to understand, we're going to come back to some of these halachos concerning bread, but this loose batter is very important for us. This idea ultimately, again, so I'll say there's another piece to this, which the Gemara here doesn't quote. Actually, I'm sorry, Rashi quoted, which I neglected to quote on the bottom of Lamed Zayin with Beis. This bread that's made for kusach. The other interesting part about this, the other reason why it's not considered to be bread, Rashi points out, is because it's made in the sun. Interesting enough, it's not baked in an oven with fire, but rather it's baked in the sun. So you begin to see that in order to satisfy a halachic criteria for bread, not only does it have to do with the ingredients, and let's say again, as we've seen, the consistency of the batter, quote unquote, but also the manner in which the bread is baked. So this is the common denominator between the Indian bread and the kusach bread. The Indian bread is put on a spit and roasted like that, or baked like that. The kusach bread baked in the sun. So you see that from a halachic perspective, it's very interesting that the definition of bread is not just simply an end result, but in order to meet the halachic criteria of bread, every stage of the process, from the batter to the baking, must conform to certain criteria, which is pretty amazing. So good. So the Gemara goes weiter. So Amar Rav Hi duvsha de tamri. So we'll see now an interesting case. Duvsha de tamri means the honey of dates, right? The honey that comes out of dates. So mevarchin iluya shakol niyeh b'dvaro. What bracha do you make on date honey? You make shakol niyeh b'dvaro. Shakol. My time, what's the reason? Zeya ba'almahu. Because I will say ultimately the honey is just considered to be the sweat of the dates. Now what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Zeya ba'almahu ve'eno pri. Meaning the honey does not have the identity of a pri. The honey is not considered to be the fruit. The honey is simply, as we just said before, the sweat of the fruit. Ve'eno pri levarich alav borei peri ha'etz. So remember again, the only thing you'll make a borei peri ha'etz on is something that's mamish considered to be part of the pri, part of the fruit. The honey itself is not part of the fruit, and therefore it just gets the shahakol. So the Gemara says, Kiman, ki ay tana. Both say, whose opinion does this reflect? It reflects the opinion of the following Tana. This nan, Devash tmorim, v'yayin tapuchim, v'chometz sephonios. So if you have the honey that comes out of dates, wine, right, or juice that comes out of apples, and chometz sephonios. Sephonios, I will say, is we're going to see are underdeveloped grapes. If you look at Rashi, so chometz sephonios, sofe anavim, she'in misbashlim olamis va'osim mehen chometz. Apparently, there are some grapes that never develop. So what do you do with the grapes that will never develop? You obviously can't use them for wine, but you can use them for vinegar, right? So therefore, again, so you have the honey that comes from dates, the wine or the juice that comes from apples, and the vinegar that comes from the siphonios, ushar me peros shel truma, or for that matter, again, any juices that comes out of fruit, right? We'll say here the Gemara is talking about legabe truma, any fruits that are truma. So we'll say, what's the halacha if you drink or consume these items that come out of the fruit of truma? Rabbi Eliezer mechayiv keren v'chomesh. Rabbi Eliezer says you'll be chayiv keren, which is the principle for consuming truma, and chomesh. Remember again, chomesh is the penalty fifth that you have to pay for partaking of truma. Remember again, this is assuming that what? I am a non-Kohen. Truma is the portion of the Kohen. I am non-Kohen. I'm not permitted to eat truma. So generally, if you go ahead and you consume truma, you're chayiv to pay the principal plus the additional penalty fifth. What the Gemara is discussing over here is as follows. Rabbi Eliezer says, therefore, again, if you go ahead and you consume honey that comes from the dates of truma, the wine, so to speak, that comes from the apples of truma, or again the vinegar that comes from the grapes of truma, Rabbi Eliezer says you've illegally consumed truma, you have to pay the keren and the chomesh. Rabbi Yeshua poter, Rabbi Yeshua on the other hand says that you are pater. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Mechayiv keren v'chomesh, l'shosim and v'shogeg. Rabbi Yeshua poter. Dezeh ba'amahu ve'ein shem truma chal alav. So we'll say, listen to this. This is actually quite fascinating. So Rabbi Yeshua says that in all of these cases you're pater. Why? Because the items that came. So for example, the honey doesn't have the status of truma. The wine that comes from the apple doesn't have the status of truma. The vinegar from the grapes doesn't have the status of truma. Why? Look at Rashi. Ve'ein lecha pri anita lamashke ela zeisim va'anavim bilbad. So I'll say, interestingly enough, because Rabbi Yeshua will say that halacha lemaisa, there are only two items whose juices have the same status as the pri itself. And that is what? Grapes and olives. Grapes and olives, right? Grape juice, olive oil, that has the status of the pri. But everything else does not have the status of the pri, and therefore if you consume it, it's not considered as if you have consumed truma illegally. Quite amazing. Trima mahu. What's the halacha concerning trima? Look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Trima mahu, ma mevarchen alav. What bracha do you make on Trima? So the shem Trima kol davar hakodesh k'tzas ve'ina muruzach. So we're going to see Trima is not really the particular name of a food. Rather, Trima is a state. Trima refers to something that is crushed, right, or crushed a little bit, but not totally changed state. So its original state, or the original item, is still somewhat recognizable. It's just crushed a bit. So the Gemara says, "Lo hava adait." I'm sorry. So one of the Rabbanan asked the Rava, "Trima mahu. What is the bracha that you make on an item that is trima?" Lo hava adaite de Rava, my kamarle. Rava wasn't sure what the person was talking about, or as Rava wasn't sure what trima is. So the Gemara says, Yosef Ravina kamei de Rava. So Ravina was sitting before Rava and overheard the conversation. Amrle, and Ravina said to this individual who was asking the question, Dishum shemi ka'amrit o dekortemi ka'amrit? Are you talking about like crushed sesame, or literally, are you talking about sesame or kortemi? Kortemi is saffron. It's actually quite interesting. If you look at Rashi, kortemi, so remember, people would crush sesame to get the oil out, to get sesame oil. What about saffron? This is actually interesting. Kortami Rashi says, Karkum shekotshim osa v'nostin bo yayin v'shosin. So apparently, what they used to do is they would go ahead and crush saffron and add it into wine as an additive. Right? So it's expensive wine, by the way. Right? Saffron is very expensive. Sadahachi v'hachi. So we'll say, so now Rava overhears the conversation, and he realizes from the context what kortami means. So he realized kortami means something that is crushed. Adahachi v'hachi, aske Rava ledaite. So while this is going on, Rava realized what they were talking about. Amarle chashilta vade ka'amrit. Look at Rashi. Amarle Rava chashilta ka'amrit, mitoch tivra ravina hevin Rava es ha'sheila. Amarle davar ma'och sha'altani, kimo be'i chashilta. Also, Rava says, you're asking me about the status of something that is crushed. So what's the halach if you take an item and you crush it up? But you crush it not beyond recognition. So I could still recognize what it was, but it's no longer in its former intact form. So the Gemara says, Va'ad karan milsan, I remember that which we said, Hadam Ravasi. And now Rava said, now they know what you're talking about. I remember that which Ravasi said, Hai tamri shal truma, mutar lasos mehen trima, va'asr lasos mehen sheichar. It's very interesting. Ravasi said that if you take dates of truma, and I also remember again a little bit of background to this, the halacha is you are not permitted to do something that would cause a loss to truma items. So truma, let's say truma belongs to the Kohen to eat, but the Kohen can only consume the truma items in a way that doesn't cause a loss of the item. Let me explain what that means. So Ravasi said you could make dates of truma into trima, which means what? If the Kohen decides that he wants to go ahead and let's say crush the dates a little bit, that's fine. Why is that fine? Because halacha l'maisa, the entire mass of the date is still there, just in changed form. What can't the Kohen do? The Kohen can't take dates of truma and make beer from it. He can't make date beer from dates of truma. Why not? Because also everyone knows when you make date beer, what happens? Right? So there's elements of the date that's not used. So that you can't do. So therefore again, now that Rava knows what they're talking about, so ultimately again, he remembers what she was v'hilchasa Tamri va'avdinu trima. Therefore, remember again, the shaila that was asked of Rava was what? Well, remember was what? What is the bracha on trima? Which I both say is an interesting bracha. What the question is if something is in a changed state, but still recognizable as to what it is, like trima. I take the date. Just take a date. I take the date. I crush the grape. I crush the date. Again, not beyond recognition. It's just a bit crushed. So what's its status for a bracha? So now Rava remembers the whole discussion by Truma, and therefore v'hilchasa tamri v'avdinu trima mevarchin ilayhu barei priya eitz. If you have dates and you made the dates into trima, i.e., you crushed the dates, what's the halacha? You make a barei priya eitz. My timer. What's the reason? Because I say ultimately again, since the dates are still somewhat recognizable, if from what they are, it's still recognizable as a date, therefore retains its identity, and therefore it gets the recha brei pri. So also we're going to discuss this in greater depth, because this discussion in general about how long does an item retain its original bracha for once its state changes is going to be an interesting sugya. But this what we begin to see is that if you have an item that was whole and is still whole, but is crushed or a bit mashed, as long as it's some semblance of its original identity is still recognizable, it retains its original bracha. Shesisa, we'll say fascinating sugya of shesisa. So what's the halacha when it comes to shesisa? Look at Rashi. What shesisa? So Rashi says, "Machala asui mekemach klayos shenisyabshu betanur bo chashi balam lachim." So we'll say. So interestingly enough, this was a dish that was made from sweetened wheat kernels. How do you get sweetened wheat kernels? So apparently, if you roast the kernels while they're still moist, I guess it locks in some element of sweetness. So we'll say, so you would take the kernels, always mixing it with some type of oil, flour, and making some type of dish out of this. So shesisa. What is the bracha on shesisa? Rav Amar shakol niye b'dvaro. Rav says you make a shakol. Shmuel Amar bore mine mizonos. You make a mazonos. Amar Rav Chisda v'lo pligi. They're not arguing. Haba ava ha berachos. So I'll say what they're not arguing. They're talking about two different types of shesisas, right? One is a thicker shesisa. Right, and one is a looser, right? A thicker consistency or a thicker batter. One is looser. So the Gemara says, "Ava la'achila avdila." So we'll say if somebody was making a thicker shesisa, that was made for consumption purposes, achila purposes. Raka l'refua ka'avdila. Interestingly enough, a loose shesisa was used for what? For refuah purposes, for medicinal purposes. Very interesting. Very interesting. So the Gemara says, "Masir Rav Yosef." V'shavin shebochashin esashasus b'shabes v'shosim zeisum hamisri. Everyone agrees shebochashin that you can go ahead and mix. You can mix the shesisa on Shabbos, and you could drink zeisum hamisri. So zeisum hamisri was some type of like Egyptian beer that apparently again had medicinal qualities as well. So if you're going to tell me that shesisa can be used for refuah, b'Shabbos mishari. Ultimately, again, is this permitted on Shabbos? Remember, again, we already spoke about that halacha l'maisa. You are not permitted to engage in forms of medicinal healing on Shabbos. Now, remember, this will be a sugya on Shabbos that we will get to. Exactly what the scope of this is. What are you not allowed to do on Shabbos? Actually, Emir Hashem, this is going to be the topic of today's lunch and learn about refuah on Shabbos, because this is already the third time we're mentioning it here. So it's on 12:15 today. We'll at least begin to speak a little bit about this. Abai says, "Va'at lo tizbara." Do you not agree with this? V'hatnan. We learned kala ochlin adam ochal refuah b'Shabbos. We'll say in general, a person is permitted to go ahead and eat all types of food on Shabbos, even if those foods are expressly being consumed for medicinal purposes. V'chamashkin shosa. So also remember again, this is a very important halacha. While it is true that you are not permitted to engage in forms of refuah on Shabbos, what you are allowed to do is what? You are allowed to eat. Always allowed to eat, right? I say you're allowed to eat halacha l'maisa, even if the item that you're eating is expressly being consumed for medicinal purposes, as long as it has the appearance of a normative act of eating, it is permitted even on Shabbos. So therefore, Rabbi say this shesisa, even if for argument's sake it is used for refuah, when it's of a looser consistency, that's fine. Because as long as it looks like a normative act of consumption, it's permitted even on Shabbos. Elamai is l'chol meimar, gavra la'achila kamachavin. Hachanami gavra la'achila kamachavin. Lish Rabbi says, as long as again it has the appearance as a normative act of consumption, therefore halacha l'maisa, it is permitted even on Shabbos. So the Gemara is lishnachina, elama is l'chol meimar, gavra la'achila kamachavin urefua memela kahavya. Hachanami la'achila kamachavin verefua memela kahavya. So we'll say ultimately again, halacha l'maisa, since again a person's kavana is for achila. By the way, even if his kavana, even if his ultimate kavana is for refuah, but since the action that he's engaging in just has the appearance of a normal act of consumption, even if the refuah comes about, it does not bother us. So the Gemara says, Utzricha de Rav Shmuel. Now I need Rav and Shmuel's statement. I will say, now what is this talking about? Take a look at Rashi. Utzricha de Rav Shmuel. Ba'af agav de Tanya le'inyan Shabbos the ochelhu umutter le'achlo b'Shabbos. It's terich l'meimar de ton bracha. And I both remember again. Remember how this whole thing started. So this started with a machlokis Rav and Shmuel about the bracha you make on shesisa, right? Rav said you make a shahakol. Shmuel said you make a mazonos. Now Rav Chisda wanted to say they're not really arguing, right? They're talking about two different types of shesisas. So Rav says you make a shahakol on a loose batter shesisa, versus Shmuel who says that you make a mazonos on a thicker shesisa. They're not really arguing. Rabbi say, interestingly enough, the Gemara then goes ahead and explains the thicker batter shesisa is achila, the looser batter shesisa is refuah. So the Gemara says, Rav Shmuel, I need Rav and Shmuel to teach me that halacha l'maisa we make a bracha on shesisa. Why? Watch this. Di'ime hai, because ultimately, again, if we just learn from this case, havamina la'achila kamachavin urefuah kahavya aval hacha kevan de l'chatchila de l'refuah kamachavin. Lo levarich iluya klal. So you must say, because without Rav and Shmuel, I would have thought as follows. When do you make a bracha on shesisa? Only when your intention is to eat, and the refuah kind of is just a what's the right word? A side effect, right? A byproduct of your consumption. But lamaisa, I would have thought that if your kavana is for refuah, maybe you don't make a bracha at all. Therefore, the Gemara says, Kashla, no, that since ultimately, again, you have hana. We spoke about this a bit last week, that even if your express intention is for refuah, but if there is hana, and I will say hana is really defined in a Silber, taste benefit, it tastes good. It tastes good, right? Even if my express kavana is not to eat, but ultimately for medicinal purposes, you still make a bracha. That's the chiddush over here. Good. So we'll say now we go weiter. Shalapas omer hamotzi. So remember again, the Mishnah said on bread we make hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We'll say very interesting Gemara. Tan Rabbanon. Mahu omer. So we'll say there's a fasting machlokes over here, or not machlokes, discussion about the proper wording of the bracha. Mahu omer. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So we'll say, what is the proper wording for the bracha? Is it hamotzi, he who brings forth bread from the earth? Rabbi Nechemia omer, motzi lechem min haaretz. Rabbi Nechemia says, no, the lashon, actually the proper wording of the bracha is motzi. Motzi, right? Bring forth bread from the earth. So watch this. Amar Rava, b'motzi kuli ama lo pligi da'apik masha. So we'll say, remember again, the goal of the wording of the bracha is that what? What tense should it be in? What tense? Right? Past. Right? Past. Because remember, obviously, I'm eating the bread. Right? I'm eating the bread. So which means the bread has been brought forth from the earth. So the goal is that it should be past tense. So Rava says, B'motzi kuli amalo pligi da'apik mashma. Everyone agrees that the word motzi is past tense. Right? Motzi lechem min haaretz, God who has brought forth bread from the earth. Meaning He's done it already. He's done it already. So the chsiv, kel motzi mitzrayim. Ki pligi. So we'll see where this machlokes comes. It's very interesting. Hamotzi. So we'll say, so the shaila is, what tense is hamotzi? Rabbanan savri hamotzi da'apik mashma. So the Rabbanan hold that hamotzi is past tense. In other words, literally, who has taken out past tense. T'chsev hamotzi lachem mayim yisrael chalamish. As the pasuk says in Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu ultimately again recounting the incredible miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has performed, God who has brought forth water from you from the rock. Rabbi Nechemia Savar, Hamotzi dimapik mashma. Rabbi Nechemia says Hamotzi means will bring, future tense. Shene'emar, hamotzi eschem mitachas sivlos mitzrayim. Rabbi, remember again, in Parshas Bo, where Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking future tense, God will be the one who will take you out from underneath the burdens of Egypt. Now, if hamotzi means future tense, then that is not the right word for the bracha. So the Rabbanon will say, "V'Rabbanon hahu hachi kamalu hakishabrichu Yisrael." No. This is what a Kashmach saying Klal Yisrael. Kad mafikna luchu. When I bring you out of Egypt, avidna luchu milsa. I will do something for you. You will know that I am the one who brought you out of Egypt. You will know that I am God who has brought you out. So the Rabbanan just have a different of dashing that pasuk. Shabbos says, so here's what we know. What we know is everyone is good with the lashon of motzi, right? Motzi is past tense. The machlokes is hamotzi. Is hamotzi past tense or is hamotzi future tense? So let's listen to this interesting story. Mishtapchin le Rabbanan the Rabbi Zera. So Mishtapchin le Rabbi Zera. Bar Rav Zevid Achud Rab Shimon Bar Rav Zevid Dadam Gadol. Now, the way to read this line is as follows: the rabbis praised Rabbi Zera, and they were praising Rabbi Zera to another individual who is known in this Gemara as Bar Rav Zevid, the brother of Rabbi Shimon Bar Rav Zevid. So they were praising Rabbi Zera to this other individual Bar Rav Zevid, and they were telling this individual Bar Rav Zevid, Rabbi Zera is a great man. So Bar Rav Zevid said, Ubaki Berachos, and Rabbi Zera, Mamish, he's an expert in brachos. Amar lahem. So Bar Rav Zevid said, you know what? So you know what? Do me a favor. When Rabbi Zera comes to town next, bring him by. Right, bring him by. Let me check this guy out. Right, bring him by. Let me see if he's as great as you claim that he is. So we'll say, so what happens? Zin lechada, ekla legabe. So one time, Rabbi Zera came to town, and the other rabbis brought him by this other sage, Bar Rav Zevid. So afiku le rifta. So this individual Bar Rav Zevid brought Rabbi Zera a loaf of bread, and Rabbi Zera made a bracha. What was the bracha? Va'amar motzi. He said motzi lechem min haaretz. So this Bar Rav Zevid was very unimpressed. Amar zeu she'omer lav da adam gadol hu ubaki bebrachasu. This is the guy you told me is so great and is so proficient in brachas. Bishlama I amrit hamotzi. If Rabbi Zera would have said hamotzi on the days ashma'inan taimav ashma'inan dehilchos akirabanan, then I would have been impressed, right? Because hamotzi, then he would have taught me two things. Number one, he would have taught me through his actions that hamotzi is what? Past tense, and that the halacha follows the rabbanon. However, ela de amar motzi my kamash malan. No big deal to say motzi. Why is it no big deal to say motzi? Everyone agrees that motzi is past tense. So the Gemara says, V'ihu, so why did Rabbi Zera make motzi? V'ihu da'avid la'afuki nafshe mi plukta. So ultimately, it was like, why did Rabbi Zera say motzi? What was he trying to do? Sidestep the machlokes. So we'll say, this is really very interesting, by the way. So what Bar Rav Zevid was saying is, see, makes sense, Rabbi Zera. What is Rabbi Zera trying to do? I want to stay out of the fray, right? I'm not interested in getting into machlokes. So we'll say, interesting, you see something fascinating. There is a time to avoid machlokes, and there are times in life when you have to take a stand. You see, some people go through life just trying to be on everyone's good side. Right? I want to be good with everyone. I don't want to make waves. Right? There's no reason to rock the boat, which is an incredible life hashkafa in many areas. Except sometimes in life, you have to take a stand, right? There's sometimes if your goal is to make everyone happy and to please everyone, then you stand for nothing. At some point in time, you have to take a stand. At some point in time, you have to cultivate an identity. At some point in time, it has to be clear who you are, what you are, and what you represent. So interestingly enough, Bar Rav Zevid was upset at Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera, it's not your job to avoid machlokes. It's your job ultimately to bring clarity where there is a point of confusion. And here you're going ahead and you're making motzi. I just wasted a perfectly good loaf of bread, right, on this guy. Right here I gave you my bread because I was hoping that I would learn something from you. And what did you do? All you did was sidestep machlokes. So there is a time to sidestep machlokes. There's a time to sidestep dispute. And there's also a time to take a stand, to draw a line, and ultimately, again, to be clear in what it is that you represent and what you believe in and what you stand for. All of us over a loaf of bread, right? Vilchas and Abba say, what is the halacha? All right, this is a bit anticlimactic. Vilchasa hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? And Abba say, what's the halacha? The halacha is the bracha we make is hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Right, that's the verbiage of the bracha. We say, "Tekaimelon kirabanan the amar the apik mashma." And I say, obviously, the fact that we make hamotzi indicates to us what that the definition, the way we understand that word hamotzi is past tense. Right, he who has brought out past tense. Good. Vali Yerakos, we're supposed to remember again. So this is actually very interesting. So the Mishnah said on Yerakos, on vegetables, what bracha do we say? Barei Pri Adama. Now, what's interesting, this is fascinating. The Gemara is picking up on the juxtaposition also. The fact that we go from bread to vegetables, which of course, I will say, if you think about it, is not normally the progression you would think. Remember, so great, such great Gemara, so incredible. So let's remember again, the way the Mishnah went is we went from peros, from fruit of the tree, right, to wine. Now the truth is that's a natural progression. Why is that a natural progression? Because again, grapes grow on a tree. We then went ultimately again, peros haaretz, things that grow from the ground. Then we went to bread, and then ultimately we went to vegetables. So that's interesting. Right, the fact that we went from fruits that grow from the ground to bread to vegetables, that we put vegetables after bread. So the Gemara notes this, and this is really fascinating. Really fascinating. Ve'ala Yerakos Omer, Katani Yerakos Dumya de Pas. Wow. So we'll say the Mishnah makes an amazing observation. The reason why vegetables are placed next to bread is why? Because halacha l'maisa, we're comparing vegetables to bread. How so? Ma pas shenishtanos al yedei ha'ar, af yirakos nami shenishtano al yedei ha'ar. Because just like bread only becomes bread because it's baked with fire, so too, even if you have vegetables that you cooked with fire, they still retain their blessing of borei pri adama. So even if you cooked vegetables still retain their identity as vegetables and therefore are still borei pri adama. So I'll say, which is fascinating. Why is this fascinating? Because halacha l'maisa, we've spent so much time talking about the idea that if you change the state of something, sometimes its bracha changes as well. Kamash malan, that vegetables are just like bread. Just like bread changes through fire and it gets a hamotzi, so too, even if vegetables change through fire, they ultimately retain their blessing as well. This teaches us shlakos are cooked vegetables. You go out and you recite Brei Pri Adama Mimai, Midiktani Yerakos Dumi Depas. So I'll say pretty incredible. So even if you cook vegetables, halacha l'maisa, they still retain their identity and therefore still get the Brei Pri Adama. So let's analyze this halacha a bit. Darash Rav Chisda Mishum Rabbeinu. Umanu Rav. So we'll say, so Rav Chisda darshed the name of Rabbi, of our Rabbi, who we talking about? Rav. Shlakos mevarchan aleim Brei Pri Adama. Cooked vegetables, you still make a Brei Pri Adama on them. But yet the rabbis who came from Eretz Yisrael, Umanu, who is that Ula? Mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Shlakos mevarchin shakol niyeh bidvaro. Wow. So the rabbis who came from Eretz Yisrael, they said, cooked vegetables, you make a shakol. Vani Omer. So I'll say, so remember again, this is Rav Chisda. So now we've got Rav saying, cook vegetables, you make a Brei Pri Adama. The rabbis who came from Eretz Yisrael, what are they saying? Shakol niyeh bidvaro. And Rav Chisda says, I want to say they're actually not arguing. They're actually not arguing. And what are they saying? Va'ani Omer, kol shetchilasa Brei Pri Adama, shlako shakol niyeh bidvaro. V'chol shetchilasa shakol niyeh bidvaro, shlako Brei Pri Adama. So we'll say this is actually quite fascinating. So Rav Chisda says, and I think the distinction is as follows. We'll translate the words literally, they will understand what it means. Anything that begins as a Brei Pri Adama, if you cook it, gets a shahakol. And anything that begins as a shahakol, if you cook it, you get a Brei Pri Adama. And I was saying what Rav Chisda says, different vegetables are consumed different ways. There are some vegetables that are meant to be consumed raw. So if a vegetable is meant to be consumed raw, in its raw state, it gets a Brei Pri Adama. If you cook it, you've now really compromised the quote-unquote edible state, and therefore what? It'll get a shahakol. it'll get a shakol. On the other hand, there are certain vegetables that are only meant to be consumed cooked. So if you eat them in their raw state, it'll get a shakol, and if you cook it, it will get its ha'adama. So if Chisda therefore wants to posit that in fact Rav and the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael are actually not arguing at all. They're just actually talking about different types of vegetables. So Bishlama, let's analyze. Bishlama kol shetchilasa shahakol niya bidvaro shalaka b'rei adama. So I understand the category of vegetables that are not supposed to be consumed raw, that are really only consumed cooked. See, if you eat it raw, it's technically speaking still edible raw, but if you eat it raw, it only gets a shahakol. It's only once you cook it, where it's being eaten really in its true form, that it gets hadama. What are examples of that? Meshkachas la, bikarba, karba's cabbage, silka are beets, kra. Kra is sometimes translated as pumpkins or gourds. So these are examples of items that people did not eat raw. And I have to understand something. A lot of these halachas will also be societal, right? Depending on what society eats. But at least Bismana Gemara, no one is interesting. People weren't eating raw cabbage. Very interesting, right? So they weren't eating raw cabbage, they weren't eating raw beets, and they weren't eating raw pumpkin/gourds. So therefore, again, if you were to eat it raw, it's edible, but it's not the normal consumable state. If you make a shackle, if you eat it raw, if you cook it, which is its desired state, you'll make adama. But I will say, each of the Gemara says, what's an example of a vegetable that halacha l'maisa they get to Brei Pri Adama in its raw state. What's an example of a vegetable that gets its bracha in its raw state, but doesn't get a hadama, only a shackle in its cooked state? This is very interesting. The example would be with garlic and leeks. So apparently, again, garlic and leeks were more normally consumed in a raw state, not in a cooked state. Therefore, in the raw state, ultimately, again, it will get a hadama, and in the cooked state, will only get the shahakal. Very interesting. So both say, so this is an incredibly important yesod. So any vegetable you have that halacha l'maisa is normally consumed in its raw state, so that means in the raw state it gets a hadama, in the cooked state will get a shahakal. Conversely, any item that is normally cooked in its raw state, is eaten in its cooked state, in its raw state will get a shahakal, and in its cooked state gets dama. Or in other words, to say it simply, vegetables get hadama when consumed in the normative way. If the normative way is raw, great. If the normative way is cooked, and I will say, of course, one can make the cogent argument, at least contemporarily, that our eating habits is a lot of vegetables are what? Consumed both ways, which is why many times we'll end up making a hadama, whether the vegetable is cooked, whether the vegetable is not, or consumed raw. So Darash Rav Nachman Mishum Rabbeinu, Umanu Shmuel. Suppose this is this. Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbeinu. Which Rabbeinu are we talking about? Shmuel. Shlakus Mavarchan Alei Brei Pri Adama. Uncooked vegetables make a Brei Pri Adama. V'chavereinu hayardim Eretz Yisrael. And our friends who have come down from Eretz Yisrael. Who is that? Umanu Ula Mished Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Shlakos Mavarchan Alei Shakol Niyeh B'dvaro. Right. So again, another same idea. Machlokes regarding cooked vegetables. V'ani Omer. And remember again. This is Rav Nachman saying, "B'machlokes shnuya." I actually think that they're actually having a machlokes, that there's a fundamental dispute about the nature of cooked vegetables. Do cooked vegetables retain the identity of the original vegetable or not? Now, interestingly enough, he sees this as part of a more general dispute regarding the impact of a cooking process on an item. When you cook something, does the item retain its original identity or not? I will say this is fascinating. This Sanya, here we go. Yotzin berake kashari b'mavushal shaloni mu'af d'Remeir. We'll say matzah on Pesach. Matzah on Pesach. So Remeir holds that if you go out and you take a matzah and what? You soak it or you cook it, as long as the matzah did not dissolve, halach l'mais Remeir says you can fulfill your obligation with this. In other words, so if you take, we'll say, hear this, you take a matzah, you cook the matzah, and it's talking with a liquid. You cook the matzah, so halacha l'maisa, as long as it did not dissolve, so it still retains its what's the word? It's tsura, its form as matzah. Ultimately, again, Halacha lamaisa, you're good. Look at Rashi. Yotzim berake gashay b'mayim aydei achilas matzah shal mitzvah v'karina be'lechamoni. That's right, Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Yotzim berake kashay v'lo mevush. Rabbi Yossi says, halacha lamaisa, if you soaked the matzah, you could still be yotzi as long as it did not dissolve. But halacha lamaisa, aval lo b'mevushal afa pi shaloni muach. I will say, but if you cook the matzah, you can no longer use that as matzah. Now, I will say, now what's the logic over here? Because Rabbi Yossi will say, once you cook it, Rashi says, it's no longer called lechem. Once you subject something to a cooking process, it loses its original identity. So the Gemara wants to suggest that, Rabbi Yossi is not just talking about legabe matzah, but Rabbi Yossi is saying in general, whenever you cook something, the act of cooking causes an item to lose its identity. So Rabbi says, so therefore again, the Gemara wants to suggest that Rabbi Yossi by matzah would say the same thing by what? Same thing by what? By cooked vegetables. That once you go and you take a vegetable and you cook it, Rabbi say, what is it? What is it? I don't know what it is, but I can tell you what it's not. What is no longer? A vegetable. What is it? Mush, right? Whatever it is, something different. I would say, and therefore again, the cooked vegetable will not get a Rabbi Adama. To which the Gemara says, no, wrong, bad comparison. Velohi. Not true. Everyone holds, I will say, that cooked vegetables are still cooked vegetables and therefore still get a Rabbi Adama. By matzah is different, I will say, because matzah, it's not enough that it looked like matzah, but it also must what? Taste like matzah. And everyone knows once you cook matzah, it no longer tastes like matzah. That's the issue over here. But by cooked vegetables, even Rabbi Yossi would agree that if you cook a vegetable, vegetable still gets hadama. However, but by cooked vegetables, even Rabbi Yossi would agree that halacha lemaisa it still has the status of a vegetable and therefore still gets a hadama. So we'll say similarly again. You have Rabbi Chia bar Abba saying Rabbi Yochanan, shlakos, cooked vegetables still get a Rabbi Adama. For Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes, Rabbi Yochanan, shlakos mevarchin shakol miyebidvaro. I will say another opinion: no cooked vegetables, you get a shakol. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, kava ula. So we'll say. So remember again. So it's just so you understand what's happening over here. So you have Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes saying that you have that cooked vegetables ultimately again get a shahakol. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak comes along and says Ula was the first one who mentioned this idea of cooked vegetables getting a shahakol. So Rav Nachman by Yitzchak suggested, he says Kava Ula l'shabeshte ki Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes. Ula reinforced his mistake because of the mistaken ruling of Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes. Right, that halacha l'maisa Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes said a wrong ruling. Ula reinforced that ruling. Ta'i bar Abzera. V'chima inyan Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes eitz Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So we'll say, how can you compare? It's actually very interesting. So how can you compare the rulings of Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes to Rabbi Chia bar Abba? Rabbi Chia bar Abba dayik v'gamar shmaiti me Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. First of all, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, everything he learned from Rabbi Yochanan, his Rabbi. Not only that, Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes lo dayik. Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes, unfortunately, was not always so careful in the transmission of his rulings. Va'od, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, kol tlasin yomin mahadar talmudei kamed Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. Every 30 days, Rabbi Chia bar Abba would go ahead and review all of his teachings in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes lo mahadar. Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes did not chazer as much. Va'od, bar min din ubar min din dahu turmisa. Furthermore, again, aside from all of this, aside from everything else, so first of all, the Gemara is pointing out that when you have a ruling by Rabbi Chia bar Abba versus Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes, Rabbi Chia bar Abba's rulings are much clearer and much more decisive because they come from and were reviewed in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan. Furthermore, again, there's this other case. Dahu turmasa the shalkile sheva zimnin. We'll say there was this turmasa. Turmasa is a type of lentil, right? So we're going to discuss this. That was cooked 7 times. So apparently the turmasa bean, right, can only be consumed after it's cooked multiple times. So the shakile shiva zimna b'kedera, va'achli le b'kinuach su'uda. And they went ahead and so there was this turmasa bean that was cooked 7 times and ultimately again was served for dessert. Turmasa for dessert is delicious. So what I said, the Gemara says, Asu shal Rabbi Yochanan. They asked Rabbi Yochanan, what's the bracha? Va'amar lahu Mevarchin alei brei priyadama. You make a bracha brei priyadama on this cooked turma sabin. So we'll say even here that what? Something that is cooked, even multiple times, still retains its original identity. Ani ra'is Rabbi Yochanan, Ais Rabbi Yochanan, sha'achal zayis maliach. He ate a salted olive, ubarich alav tchila v'sof, and he made a bracha before and afterwards. Say if you say that even cooked vegetables retain their identity, so it means that before he ate it, he said a prayer. And after he ate it, he made an ala eitz. But if you say that cooked vegetables no longer retain their identity, then I understand if you made a bracha before, that could be a shakol. But what's the bracha that he made at the end? To which the Gemara says, well, maybe Dilma borein nefashos rabos v'chasronan al kol ma shebara. Maybe the after bracha that he made was borein nefashos. So we'll stop over here for today. But again, so just to understand, we're leaving off still with the machlokes. Still with the machlokes, ultimately, what is the status of cooked vegetables? So on one hand, we have Ula, Rabbi Binyan Bar Yefes telling me that cooked vegetables are a shahakol, do not retain their original identity. Rav Chia Bar Avin and Rabbi Yochanan ultimately again understanding that Allah Lamaisa, it is still a brei priyadama. The entire matter is still wrapped up in machlokes. Don't eat any cooked vegetables today, so avoid that today. Only raw vegetables today. Emir Hashem resolution tomorrow.